Because you light up my life.
Meanwhile,
there was a time when outside toilets were the norm. And someone said, why don't we have a toilet indoors? And the world was shocked. Hey, how can you have a toilet indoors? And lo and behold, would you have a toilet outdoors now? And I was sitting at my desk. A parcel arrives.
You've got mail.
It was the Mifa Wild Camping. And the point I'm trying to make is, sometimes you're sure you don't need something. When this arrived, it's a speaker with a light. Just what I needed. Is it? And then I turned it on. And do you know what? It wasn't the worst sounding speaker I ever heard. Looks like a novelty, sounds like a novelty, but maybe it works in the real world. So I figured, okay, I know I didn't ask for it. I know they just sent it to me. But you know what? I'm going to actually do a review based on the fact it's a novelty speaker that does not suck. Wow. When I realised it wasn't completely awful, I thought I have to test this the way it's meant to be heard. Mifa are all about outside tuning. They've decided they're going to pick a niche. They've gone outdoors. And this one is called, obviously, not just because it looks like a lantern and it's got a speaker, but because it actually says it's the Mifa Wild. I know they love this play on it. Oh, we're wild. I don't find them that wild. However, Wild Camping. It's designed so you can go camping. You can hang this from the top of your tent. You can have a light, which is worked independent of the actual speaker itself. I can turn the lights on like that. And indeed, I can change the color temperature from 2000 to 2700. So the lighter light will be 2700 and Kelvin. And if I do that, the warmer light, 2000 Kelvin. And I can turn it off altogether just like that. So, right, I'm going to test it the way it's meant to be heard. I built a wigwam in my garden. I held it above me. In fact, I hung it from the top of the wigwam. Seemed to work okay. I thought, let's try it in a different type of tent. I set up a teepee. I tried it in that, and lo and behold, I started getting this headache. I didn't know what was going on. I went to the doctor. I said, look, I've been testing this outdoors. Suddenly I'm getting a headache. What could it be? He said, tell me exactly what you've been doing. I said, well, I set up my wigwam. Everything seemed okay. I then tried it in a teepee, and it all went wrong. He said, that's the problem. I said, what? He said, you're too tense. So we got to the root of the problem. Now it's time for the review. I know, to you, it may not be the most exciting speaker. Oh, why has he not got the Boombox 3? The reason is, it wasn't available till just about now, and I have ordered it, but it ain't coming, and it probably won't come for a while. So you'll have to sit tight for now. But yes, more popular speakers are coming. But for now, the one that we didn't think we needed, it doesn't suck, and that's the reason I'm going to review it. It's a novelty speaker that doesn't suck. So, that you've got the overview. I can turn on the speaker separately, as I already showed you, to the light. I can turn on the light from the top. It's a 230 lumens light. I have next to it a pure lantern. Oh, it's awful. Why is it awful? Because it doesn't have a speaker, and it doesn't make a cup of tea. It just lights up, but it's 1,000 lumens. So the difference between 1,000 lumens, well, let's put this on the brighter light, and 230 lumens, it's not insignificant, and the clue is it's got 4 times the lumens. That's a £20 lantern with 1,000 lumens. This is around 90 quid, $103 lanterns. But so we can already see the difference between a dedicated lantern and my lantern. But it's got an integrated portable Bluetooth speaker. So if you want to go in a neat package, you are actually camping, it's a viable option. I've gotten next to it to compare it. I think similar-ish dedicated portable Bluetooth 360-degree speakers. Got the Soundcore Flare 2. Got the Tribit Stormbox original. They're using that name now on loads of speakers. It is rather confusing. We've got the Mifa Wild Camping. These will cost you about 56 quid for the Stormbox. About 80 quid for the Soundcore Flare 2. So that's about 90 quid with about 15 quid's worth of light. How does it stack up to actual speakers around that price? First thing we're going to have a look at is the headlines. What's it all about? Well, we know it's about having some lights. They're not flashy LEDs like you get on the Flare 2, but it's far more practical in a power cut. You can actually see your way to getting out of a building or whatever you need to do in the dark. Turn it off. They claim a charging time of about 4 hours. The good news is it's USB-C and it takes advantage of that. So it charges at 5 volts, 3 amps. A lot of them are about 2 amps. So you're getting 10 watts of charging. You get 15 watts of charging from that, which is good. If you just use the light itself, they're claiming about 18 hours, indeed, in its brightest mode, but with audio off. And the reason is you're going to get a decent amount of light out of that because it's a decent sized battery. We've actually got a 35.5 watt hour battery. That's really, really decent. That's almost twice the size battery you get in similarly priced Bluetooth dedicated speakers. Both of these two have a 19.2 watt hour battery. So already, yes, there's a big difference in the battery capacity, but the flip side of that is that's 850 grams. That is 600 grams. That is 550 grams. So it is a bit heavier, but look, we can hang it up and hold it quite nicely. It does have the advantage of, and I know a lot of you do like it, a separate flashcard slot where you can play music straight off the lantern itself without even needing your phone or anything else. It can be used as a power bank, and a lot of these speakers have integrated power banks. Output normally, often around 5 volts, 1 amp. This is doing 5 volts, 2 amps. So again, 10 watts of output as a power bank. That's actually quite good. In speaker mode, they claim 38 hours. Obviously, it should be mixed use, blah, blah, blah. It's really hard to compare. I prefer just going by battery capacity because if you've got more bass, less battery life. If it goes louder, less battery life. It's really hard. I think it's a silly way to compare. However, they say 38 hours, and of course, depends on volume and audio content. Bass heavy tracks sap up more of that battery. If you use both the light and the speaker itself, they claim about 13 hours. That's the headlines. In terms of that speaker itself, 20 watts, it's no slouch. So when I say novelty item, but it's a serious novelty item, 20 watts versus 20 watts and 24 watts. And the question is then, you're not going to pay 90 quid just for 230 lumen, 230 lumen light, but you may, if actually you can have a light and a decent sounding speaker. We'll have a look at what may come down the road by having a look at the frequency response measurements.
Pink noise, 40, 60, 80, 100% volume. You can see how non-linear the volume steps are. And of course, 360-degree speaker measured on axis. It's never going to be flat. It's a kind of a double smiley face. We've got a smile here. We've got a smile there. Dipping down to 200 hertz, 3 kilohertz. We do have a bass adjustment at lower volumes. It's a one-note bass. About an 85 hertz peak. It's still there even at maximum volume, but reduced relative to the rest of the frequency response. And you can see really the signature tuning is basically 3 peaks. We've got the 85 hertz peak of the bass. In terms of mids, 600 hertz to about 1.5 kilohertz wideish peak, and a big old peak, 6 to 6.5 kilohertz. So clearly not hi-fi. We will see how this sounds in the real world.
So we know, ideally we'd like a flat line. Well, not really. I know that's that's a starting point. All these speakers will need to be EQ'd because you wouldn't have a target house curve for speakers like this that you would on your big tower speakers and a proper hi-fi setup. It just doesn't work like that. It doesn't transfer like that. However, that kind of frequency response, it's either, I'm going to call it a double smiley, it's like 2 smiles together. It's an absolute roller coaster, isn't it? It's a big dip. Oh, how many time it's going, and then it's going up. Oh, how going, and then you're going down again. It's a roller coaster.
Okay, remember we're parked in the ethnic princess section.
Don't worry, this time I'm gonna write down where I parked.
The point is, it's tuned for outdoors. Outdoors listening, quite different because it may just be you just want sheer volume, or you're just trying to cut through background noise. It's not about indoors, carefully tuned, carefully EQ'd, to get the exact frequency response we want in our exact listening position. Quite different. So that may well work very well. Just remember, I'm measuring these on axis. These are so-called 360-degree speakers, not really 360-degree speakers. They will sound different depending on where you listen to it from, because this has front and rear passive radiators. It's got the side full range woofers. This has passive radiators on the end. Then on each side it has its woofers, and this has passive radiator woofer on each side. So you're off axis in the real world to the actual drivers themselves. So can't really expect a flat frequency response, and these are nothing to do really with speakers. This is about having a walk-in around it and optimizing how much sound you can get when you're listening to it from all directions. We're gonna compare them. I'm going to have the Mifa Wild Camping at about 60% volume, and these two are loudness matched. And in the real world, I'd have to play that about 80%. That about 75% volume. Well, actually 73% was the exact volume I played when they were loudness matched.
So when all the speakers are playing the same track and loudness matched, the Mifa Wild Camping is holding its own. Yes, it's kind of like a 3-note trick pony, 6 kilohertz, that 800 hertz area, and then that 85 hertz peak in the bass, but it kind of works. So you got some brightness, you got some mids, and you got a little bit of bass. It's actually got the most bass of all these 3 speakers when in default mode. Flare 2 can match the upper bass, but the Mifa dominates in mid bass, and then the Flare 2 takes over again, that green line, in terms of the deep bass. But none of them really do deep bass. It's just relative to the other speakers. So the Mifa Wild Camping, it's got the most overall bass, and it's got the most overall highs. That tells you the V-shaped nature of the tuning.
The Stormbox, the original Stormbox. This is the original Stormbox from when it came out, I think back in 2019. And of course, the firmware changes a lot down the road. The newest ones may not sound like that. However, in its day, when we first got that sounded okay. To be honest, by current standards, I would say that's not great at all. Although, yeah, it's only about 55 pound, but you could certainly do better for the money. I'm just trying to give you a reference point for, I'm not going to call it a novelty speaker, but, you know, it's a niche use speaker. It certainly does well against the original Stormbox, so it's not awful, as I said. In fact, it holds up pretty well. It's making the Stormbox sound quite compressed and off. It doesn't sound pleasant at all. It wasn't that bad when I first heard it, but by today's standards and with lots of other reference points, it's not a speaker I would say it should be an option at all. Unless, of course, the new ones are very different, and that's very possible when they continually update the firmware and don't tell you, and you've got no way of knowing what firmware you're on unless you start messing around. The very messy media tool and all that, blah, 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 and we're not going to get into that again. Some of the frequency response are almost complete opposites. We've got a 3 kilohertz dip on the Stormbox, exactly where we have a peak on the Mifa, and then we've got a peak on the Mifa around the 6 kilohertz mark, exactly where we have a dip. So that alone makes them sound quite different, and they both lack upper bass. However, I find that, is it hi-fi? No. And are you shocked? No, you shouldn't be, quite honestly. And our audiophiles already turning off. Of course they're turning off. The minute they saw this light come on, I'm out of here, they all said. And I'm surprised they even stayed this long. However, it's not a bad listen. I can pick out loads of holes in the sound, but for an outdoor tune speaker, for a niche speaker, for something that actually has dual use, as a light, is enough light there at night or even during the day. If it's a really dark day, I don't know, there's an eclipse or something, to do a job. It's not the brightest light. You can certainly get cheap lights with lots of brighter lights, but for the dual niche it's trying to fill, I was actually quite surprised. You know, I've had this for a couple of months. I just didn't even bother listening to it. I didn't ask for it. I don't need a novelty speaker. I'm already way behind on what I'm trying to review anyway. But when I heard it, I thought, do you know what? I've heard dedicated speakers that don't sound quite as pleasing as that. I'm going to let you know about it. So, against the Flare 2, which I've always preferred, is a nice, pleasant listen, the Flare 2. Even that is starting to sound dated now against all the other reference points we got out there. But it's still a pleasant. That's not pleasant to me. Let's not talk about that anymore. But the Flare 2 still has a place. I played that in default mode because the other two are in default mode. And I know whatever I do, someone will scream, well, you could have improved it with EQ. And then someone says, well, we need to hear it. So I think there'll be more screams if I had it in EQ mode. No, that matters. You can improve it in EQ, but not by leaps and bounds, but you could certainly make it more pleasant and even out the bass, because although it does have an extended bass, let's just get this right. None of them have boom, boom, boom. Okay, none of these are boom boxes. I'm talking relative to each other. That will play a bit deeper than the other two, but it lacks a lot of mid bass. This has got a lot of mid bass and no extension, and that's got very little mid bass and lots of extension, but you can smooth that out in EQ, but it will start getting a bit a woolly, cardboardy sound bass when you start trying to EQ it. So not very musical, but a pleasant, nice listen for what else is out there, I think. Remember, outdoor tuning, default tuning, you know, more like for indoor. It sounds more right, it sounds more balanced, but that's a brighter sound, and you may want a brighter sound anyway, and it's got plenty of mid bass, and you may prefer the mid bass over some of the upper bass and deeper bass because, you know, the mid bass is scooped out now on that. So, although I think the Flare 2 sounds better, it's not a billion miles in it, and actually I think the difference is a matter of taste. You can get a nice listen, although I'm saying outdoors, you can get a decent listen indoors. Let's not get carried away. I'm not saying this is a new contender or anything like that. I'm saying for a niche stroke novelty-ish speaker, that doesn't sound bad. You can enjoy listening to music on this. So we need to know, what's the maximum headroom? Is that a deal breaker? Does that change everything? Obviously none of them are going to go that loud. They're small speakers, aren't they? Small drive. In fact, the actual woofers, so they've all got full range woofers. I think of the sound. I don't know the exact size of the woofers on the Flare 2, but both the Stormbox and the Camping have 45mm woofers. And of course, they all have two passive radiators. Let's try it at Maximum volume.
So the Mifa Wild Camping, it does go the loudest, and not by just a little bit. It's nearly 3 decibels, 2.5 decibels, louder than the Flare 2, and that's thanks to its very bright peak at the high end from 3 kilohertz and above. Absolutely dominates between these 3 speakers. It's very, very bright, but it's an outdoor speaker. It's a camping speaker. That's going to work outdoors, and it still has its big peak around the 80 hertz, 85 hertz mark, and then drops off rapidly more than the other 2 speakers. The Flare 2 does hold the most deep bass, but as we said before, none of them have real deep bass. It's just a relative thing with the other 2 speakers. The yellow line, the Tribit Stormbox, it's totally lost here. It doesn't have the volume, and quite honestly, it didn't sound that good at low volumes either. The Flare 2, a little bit more balanced, but you've got that big, around the 300 hertz peak on the bass, which is unnatural. And then it dips below that. You can sort that out in EQ, but we're doing these in default mode. And the Mifa Wild Camping is doing pretty good if it's about loudness and clarity outdoors.
Who'd have thunk it? The winner at maximum volume, if it's all about maximum volume, it is indeed our niche stroke, novelty-ish speaker. It's the Mifa Wild Camping, and this is why I wanted to do this review, even though I waited a couple of months because I thought there's no way I'm doing that review, you know, when I've got loads of other things I could review. It's not terrible. It goes the loudest because it's very, very bright, but without being ear-piercing. So a lot of these speakers, you get 100% and it's a shriek fest. This is not a total shriek fest. I can still listen to it, and it goes louder than the Flare 2. The Stormbox, we already said, oh, let's forget about it, and you really forget about it. As you can see, when you push it to maximum volumes, it doesn't hold up as well, even though on paper it should have around the same amount of in fact, it's got 24 watts. On paper, that's why I said, let's forget about watts. How do they measure it? What are they measuring? It's meaningless. We do the test anyway, maximum volume. We know which goes the loudest. So the Flare 2, I would say, obviously sounds the most balanced. I say obviously, it's not as quiet. It's not as loud, so it's entitled to be a bit more balanced. It's the best listen, but it doesn't go as loud. It's all about loudness and still sounding okay. The Mifa Wild Camping ticks the boxes. So there you go. It wasn't about, here's a new exciting speaker, everybody should have one, and everything else is obsolete. But I just wanted to say, obviously, I don't try a lot of novelty speakers. I'm calling it novelty. In my terms, it's a novelty. It's a serious speaker. If you seriously want to go camping, you can hook it up anywhere. You can use a flash card. You don't need any other device. You can play music straight from there. You can actually pair a ton. You can pair more than one, more than two, at least three. I think according to the manual I saw, it doesn't do stereo pairing, but you can certainly add loads in party mode. You can control it, the volume up, down, skip, forward, blah blah blah, from the speaker itself. And indeed, I didn't show you how much light. I've got it on maximum light, but you've got a dial on the top to turn it up or down as you want. So there probably is a market for this. I just don't know what that market is. Surprise, surprise. I never went camping. I was never into sleeping outdoors in a tent, in a sleeping bag, you know, in the middle. I just stick me in a hotel room. Think me in a decent hotel room with a balcony overlooking the pool. And I'm happy. I'll sit there with a drink and I could spend many hours. Said I don't use earbuds, but I'll use some headphones on the balcony because of people complaining as usual. The room next door. That's me. But if you like going camping, and a lot of people do, and it's glamping now, isn't it? So it's not even old-fashioned, back to basics survival mode camping. Now it's glamping. Why don't they just put the tent inside a hotel room then? Just cut out the nonsense. Is there anything else I should tell you? We talked about prices, the battery capacity. Of course, they're all SBC codecs. We got Bluetooth 5.3. It's the most modern of these three speakers because it's the Stormbox. Why would you still buy it after this review? But anyway, Bluetooth 4.2, and of course we've got Bluetooth 5 on the Soundcore Flare 2. The Flare 2 does do stereo pairing, but the Stormbox also only does party mode. They've all got USB-C connections for charging, except for the Stormbox. Again, another negative. But only the Stormbox as auxiliary. So yeah, there's people might buy it just for that. But there will still be better options for that. Only the Mifa Wild Camping can be used as a power bank. So technically it's got lights. It's not the flashy disco lights that we got almost kind of sort of on the Flare 2. But it will light up your life in a way the Flare 2 never can. The others only charge at 5 volts, 2 amps. That will charge at 5 volts, 3 amps. It will float. You drop it in wood, it will float, but it will float like that, so the drivers will be submerged. But hey ho, it is IP67. That means it's dustproof. Again, great for camping. It's so dustproof, as well as you can submerge it in up to 1 meter of water for up to 30 minutes, and you won't lose it. It'll float, but the drivers will be submerged. But here's the downside: it's Bluetooth 5.3. But the testing it on YouTube, 233 milliseconds of latency is awful. It's terrible. It's unusable for lip sync issues anyway. But the Stormbox was even worse, 260 milliseconds, and just scraping in is usable, 80 milliseconds on the Flare 2. And of course, it's only the Flare 2 that has an app, and the app is really reusable. Because Tribit do have an app, but not all the older speakers are supported. That's not supported as far as I know. But there is a great app for the Flare 2. You can. It's not that EQable, because it will start doing weird things once you start trying to flatten out the frequency response, but it can certainly improve that default sound. So that's the wrap up. It's already very long for a novelty speaker. Abu, now being known as, oh, don't take him serious. Not only is he deaf, he reviews lanterns. He used to do mattresses, now he does lanterns. How can you take him serious? Who am I talking about? Can you guess who I'm talking about? Anyway, that's the end of this video. Hopefully you got something out of it, and if you didn't, okay, fair enough. You've watched a couple of ads anyway, haven't you? Or at least one ad. I know you've had to watch at least one ad. I'm making a joke because you get very little from those ads. Still, people think you can get like 1,000 views on a video and you've made like £200,000. If it worked like that, we'd all be retiring from YouTube. But it don't work. I wouldn't do that, because you said you're not here for the money. You said you're here for the beer, and that's true. Absolutely true. So if in fact we got nothing from YouTube, the only downside would be, obviously, I'm paying for it. I didn't pay for that. I said they sent it to me, but the bigger speakers, the expensive speakers, apart from the Blast and the Motion Boom Plug, yeah, I'm getting a lot more free speakers than that, even the bigger speakers. But most of the speakers I'm paying for. The Boombox 3, whenever it comes, I've paid for. As usual, us, JBL, it's their PR company. Pretty awful, as I said. The only thing I ever got out of them was a soundbar because they got me mixed up with someone else. I don't know, with Flossie Carter. I don't know, how could you mix me with Flossie Carter? I don't know. But anyway, that was the only thing they ever sent me. I've asked for a few times. I sent them millions of emails. The last one, they said, "Oh, we'll add you to our list of influencers so it doesn't go in the spam folder." They're telling me all my emails went in the spam folder. I'm sending it from a kosher email address. Why would it go into a spam folder? As their spam filter set up, I think I should apply for their IT department, because there is nothing that should be flagging my emails apart from I'm asking for a free speaker. Not the end of the world, is it? Anyway, they don't just say, "Well, we won't send it to you." They just say, "Maybe one day," and you never hear from them again. They've done it with the Boombox 2. They've done it with the Boombox 3. But we've made progress. They've added me to their influencer list. Apparently, that means you don't go into their spam folder. But they still don't send you anything, and they don't answer. Actually, the first time ever I tried to push my weight. I haven't got much weight. I have a little channel. But however, sometimes you feel like you're bigger because people big you up like you know. I said last time there's a dozen. Actually, there's about 2 dozen of you bigging me up all the time. And you kind of think of what I said. I know I'm only a small channel, but, you know, I do have some influence out there. They said, "Oh, all right, we'll put you on the list then." So that didn't make any difference. Blimey, I've waffled again, and I've done it again. And this is supposed to be a serious review. So, I thank you for watching. I hope to see you in my next video, of course. Where else would I hope to see you? I wouldn't want to see you outside my front door. That would be very spooky. But I hope to see you in another video. Thank you for watching.
I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. Ain't no project wife, got my logic right, cause I'm not your type. I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. Sorry, ma, I ain't get it right. I'ma just live my life. I ain't about that. I ain't about that life.